quiet down a little bit. Got all right eating problems isolated, I think. So, I want to call this regular meeting of Midcoast Community Council to order for April 22nd, 2015. As normal, we start with government reports. I believe Nicholas indicated he did not have anything for this evening. Does any other government official wish to make an announcement at the beginning of the meeting?
You want me to mention one?
Sure, come on up.
I'll cover this more when it's my time on the panel, but because the playback of this meeting is tomorrow at 8 o'clock.
We can't hear you.
Well, there's no amplification because this is just for the TV. Okay, let's not overdo it. So this meeting will be played back tomorrow at 8 o'clock, so I'm making the announcement right now. The Granada Community Services District meeting, which should have been last week, the regular meeting, couldn't be held due to unavailability of council, so it's rescheduled to tomorrow night. And it turns out that the survey has been tallied. It's complete. So anybody that's interested in that, hit record on this meeting and run down to the Granada Community Services District meeting. It's either the third or the fourth item on the agenda, so you won't miss too much if you run down there right now.
The joy of time-lapse recording. All right. And since this is a regular meeting of the MCC, we have public comment at the beginning. If you wish to make a public comment, come on up here, give your name and the community you live in, and please keep it to 3 minutes or less. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Steve Johnson with the Pacifica Land Trust, and I wanted to make people aware in general that the Land Trust is operating under a grant from the State Coastal Conservancy to do what we're calling a virtual interpretive project on the Pater Point headlands, which means we're building a cell phone application that people are going to be able to walk around the headlands with and get an interpretive guide to the geography of the trails, the history of the railroad, the ecology. And the history aspect, we really need local community help with to see what kinds of photographs or stories that you might want to contribute to what you may know about the Coast Railroad, going around the headlands, old stories of the resort, or old family stories that you might know, family photographs, anything that you might be able to contribute to a virtual interpretive program about the Pater Point headlands would be greatly appreciated. Again, that's the Pacifica Land Trust. My name is Stephen Johnson. I've got cards, and the Land Trust, of course, has their own website. So if you'd like to look that up and get in touch with us that way, we would appreciate it. Thanks.
And does anybody else wish to make a public comment?
Dan Haggerty, El Granada. I just want to make an announcement that there's going to be a meeting, public meeting notice for the Coastside Fire District Station 41 rebuild. The location will be at the Coastside Fire Station 41 at 531 Obispo Road. That'll be next Wednesday, April 29th, 7 p.m. I'll just read the announcement quickly. Join us for a public meeting to learn about proposed construction of the new Coastside Fire Protection District Fire Station 41. The station is currently located at 531 Obispo Road in the El Granada community. The district is planning to construct the new station on Obispo Road south of the existing fire station. The meeting will include a presentation by the District Board of Directors, staff, and architect. At the conclusion of the presentations, the board will facilitate a public question and answer session. So I look forward to seeing many of you there. Thank you.
And does anybody else wish to make a public comment this evening? All right, I will close public comment. I will also mention in regards to that meeting, the Midcoast Community Council had scheduled a special meeting for the same time and date. Given that this meeting is of interest to quite a few of the residents of Midcoast, we'll reschedule our special meeting. We're not quite sure just when yet. We have to check on venues.
What's the topic for your special meeting?
It was letters to the county consultants on the safety mobility study and the traffic study. Sabrina?
it wasn't perfectly clear, I just wanted to make it a little extra clear that the meeting that has just been discussed, which is going to be held at the fire station in El Granada, is an opportunity for the public to come and speak. And if there's public interest in a community center for the Midcoast, this would be the right time to express that interest to the fire district. So if you support a community center on the Midcoast, you might want to come to the meeting and speak to the fire district. Thanks.
What time is the meeting again?
7 p.m. next Wednesday, April 29th, at the current District 41 fire station.
Okay, everybody got that? All right, with that, we'll move on to our regular agenda, and we'll be starting with Marlene Finley, San Mateo County Parks Director, giving us an update on county park status as they affect the Midcoast.
Thanks, Dave.
Slide 3.
Oh, I can do it, thanks. Good evening, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here and share with you what we have going on in your county parks here in San Mateo County on the coast. So, I just wanted to kind of set the tone a little bit, be in the setting, a little landscape of the coast, calm me down a little bit before the presentation. So we'll go over, quickly I wanted to just go over a little bit about what's gone on in the past, because I thought if you'd like to post this PowerPoint on the MCC website, it's always good to have that context. Just a few things I wanted to point out is what a great position we are here on the coast to have the recreational needs assessment and an action plan. The needs assessment was done in 2002 and then the action plan in 2007. The action plan includes some costs, some estimates on cost for items to implement, and by and large, that's what we're using in combination with a lot of input on what we focus on here in the Mid-Coast. So we have this good planning that's gone on in the past. It's really the envy of a lot of the other unincorporated areas in San Mateo County.
Can you explain the last item there?
That created the Midcoast Park District. We didn't used to have a district within San Mateo County parks that was specific to the coast. And when Dave Holland was the parks director, he reorganized the districts and made the Midcoast Park District. That's one of 4 districts in San Mateo County parks. A few other items the past that we've worked on with you in the community, the acquisition of many of the parcels at Pillar Point, the California Coastal Trail Conceptual Plan, it's all listed there and many of you are familiar with these. So let's talk about recent, within the last 12 months. Well, County Parks acquired the Wicklow property. That was a transfer from Peninsula Open Space Trust. 478 acres. We completed the Devil's Slide Trail, celebrating the 1-year anniversary in March. Acquired the Moss Beach Park, which is under renovation right now. If you drive by, you'll see the work that we're doing every day. Also, with the help of the Friends of Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, who purchased the video monitor, we now have at the little ranger shack there the video that we could show to orient people to the marine environment so that they can be good stewards of the intertidal area, and also take care of the seals. And also we completed the parking lot after many years. We worked with the Land Trust to complete the Wave Crest section of the coastal trail. We provided the equipment operators to grade that as a partner. Also finished the Murata Surf restroom. 2 weeks ago, we dedicated the Overlook on the Devil's Slide Trail to the environmentalist Ollie Mayer, who did so much to help with the building of the tunnel and get that decision and work with the tunnelistas. It was a wonderful event for those of you that weren't able to make it. The San Vicente Creek Restoration Phase 1 we worked on, and then the Cypress Grove trimming that we talked about last year and we've since implemented. So some pictures. Here's the video monitor where we play the award-winning video about Fitzgerald Marine Reserve. The parking lot project there's a catchment basin there in order to improve the water quality coming off the parking lot. This was one of the first Moss Beach Park community events since the county has assumed responsibility. A lot of you were there helping out. And now what's going on today? We continue with the Moss Beach Park renovation. We're also helping the community at Clipper Ridge, that's Princeton by the Sea on Clipper Ridge. There were 2 playgrounds there, and it's not a county park, but it's on county property. And the people in the subdivision have been maintaining that playground, and they came to us and asked for help. We did a playground inspection, and we found a lot of concerns with those playground structures. So the HOA immediately closed the playground. It's since been pulled out, and we're working with the Princeton by the Sea HOA group to put in a new playground. And we're using the Midcoast community funds to help pay for those new playground improvements. And in addition, the HOA is contributing funds, and San Mateo County Sheriffs are donating funds. The Green Valley Trail design public meeting is May 11th at 6 p.m. at the Pacifica Community Center. We just got that set up yesterday, so we'll put notice out on that. So we're moving along. The consultant has already done several of the GIS layers and got site information for us so that we can start looking at the alignment of the trail and what people want for that trail. Corey Wicklow, park fuel reduction. We were able to get an additional $50,000 in Measure A funds this year for additional fuel reduction, fire fuel reduction projects, removing of vegetation in county parks, and one of those projects is going to be in the Wicklow area, and we're working in partnership with CAL FIRE on that. Surfers Beach Access and Coastal Trail, Nicholas Calderon's been working hard on that with the planning department and others. And County Parks we've provided comment, and we know that we'll be maintaining and managing that area after it's completed. The multimodal trail design is another project that's being led by the planning department in San Mateo County, with County Parks assisting and reviewing during the process. Also, we contributed toward the parking and access studies that Christina Fitzgerald's going to speak about with the National Park Service. So we contributed funds on that, and we've been providing comment. Pillar Point Bluff property, that is a transfer, 21 acres, that Post has offered to county parks, and we're in our due diligence phase right now on that transfer. And we're also, County Parks, San Mateo County Parks is assisting the Granada Community Service District under an agreement to provide parks and recreation support. And also our Park and Rec Commission, one of the commissioners is here this evening, Neil Marilis, a subcommittee came up with a policy for mini parks in our San Mateo County parks, and the Park and Rec Commission just approved that or recommended it, and it's going to the Board of Supervisors on May 19th. And what's significant about this is, as you look through the history of county parks in San Mateo, which goes back 91 years now, there's been an emphasis in large regional parks, natural areas, big parks, not so much infrastructure. And increasingly there's a need in the unincorporated area for active play areas. And people are asking for this, whether it's the Moss Beach Park or Friendship Park over in North Fair Oaks or the Clipper Ridge Playground. And so the Parks and Rec Commissioners, the mini park subcommittee, came up with a policy that really stresses the health aspects of being active and why we need active parks, and also the importance of having communities to support, the community to support parks. So a group, whether it's a nonprofit group, another agency, or some type of community council to support parks. And both Chris Johnson here and Neil Marilis, that's here tonight, worked on that mini park subcommittee. So mini parks, here's an example, whether it's a community garden or a play structure or even a ball field. It can be a new day for us in county parks that we're able to provide active play areas. Some other projects we have going on, this is San Pedro Valley. We have some work to do on the Wheeler Ranch Road, a popular walking area, Pillar Point Bluffs. This is looking back from the bluff into the Thompson property that we're working on the transfer now. The Ollie Mayer Overlook dedication, I love it. She was a fierce force of nature, fearless. Another example of the work that we're doing, this is the Jabata grass removal, pampas grass to some, and that's on Devil's Slide. People have been commenting on what a good job the contractors are doing knocking that down. But you know the job is never done, right? And this is San Vicente Creek, the plan for removing the invasive non-native plants and replanting with native plants. So here's a before at the mouth of the creek at Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, ice plant, during and after native plants coming in. We had to water them a little bit. And this is the work that we did to address some of the safety hazards in the cypress grove up on the bluff. And listening to you, we scaled way back on that project. The person that we hired to come in and trim the cypress trees, they do a lot of work at the Presidio in Golden Gate National Recreation Area. He does a really good job. And also we had our biologists out there on site during the work. That's right at the end when he was wrapping up the work. And if you think all we do is manage settings or landscapes, we also do some programming, and often it's in partnership with our Friends group. And in this case, it's the Friends of Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, and this is the Junior Ranger program that's held in the summer. It's a really popular program. And one of our rangers, Catherine Wright, and some of the other rangers as well, help with this program. We also have started to do some special programs on occasion. When there's a low tide, we've had some evening tide pooling events that we people can sign up for them on Eventbrite. They're free, but we limit the numbers. And the last one we had, it was full within an hour and a half of announcement. Really popular. The other one that was popular that we just tried recently was the night hikes at San Pedro Valley Park. That also filled up in less than a day. Green Valley Trail location. This shows the area for the Green Valley Trail, which if you're not familiar with this trail, it will become part of the California Coastal Trail, and it'll start on the south end parking lot of Devil's Slide, and then it'll progress up into, I'll show you on the map. So up here is the Devil's Slide, then you cross the road here, walk along this pathway that Caltrans put in, and then cross up this way, and then you'd be on state park property all the way to Gray Whale Cove. So if you're familiar, the ranger residence is back here. So that's the trail we're working on. If you want to give input and tell us what you like to see on that trail, May 11th. Lisa Ketchum asked about the Midcoast Trust Fund. Our current balance is $324,244. And then we have the planned expense of $100,000 for the playground equipment at Clipper Ridge. And to give you an idea that some of the other expenditures last year, one person paid into the fund and then they didn't build their house, so we had to give them a refund. That went through a whole administrative process. Some tree removal work, potholing for the sewer main, and then the partially paid for the Moss Beach restroom at Moss Beach Park. And here's our revenue that we have coming in the last 3 years and our expenses. And now looking into the future, these are some of our junior rangers out at Fitzgerald Marine Reserve. On the horizon, I'm really excited to share with you the support that we have from the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors for Measure A funds for parks. This is the half-cent sales tax that the county is managing. It was a 10-year program, a half-a-cent sales tax, and the Board of Supervisors approved $5 million a year for the next 2 years for parks. And some of those are in capital funds. Some of that $5 million will go to some capital projects, large capital projects, some smaller capital projects, and then the Board of Supervisors gave tentative approval to a list that was generated from letters of intent from the community for funding projects. So just to give you, I wanted to share with you some of those projects that we're just starting to get organized around. One is the Student Conservation Association Youth Corps. So we have 2 to 3 Student Conservation Association crews that work in San Mateo County parks a year due to a generous donation from the San Mateo County Parks Foundation and other sources. And now we'll be able to move up to as many as 6 crew and some interns. And not only will they be able to work in county parks, but they can work in state parks, federal parks. They can work for Granada Community Services District. They can work in SFPUC. They can work on the Bay Ridge Trail. So we're just getting started on recruiting students for this and also what projects. I'm starting to work with my colleagues in the other agencies to see what projects we can help with. Pedro Point, there were 2 letters of intent approved for Pedro Point. One was submitted by the Pacifica Land Trust and the City of Pacifica, and the other we put in, San Mateo County Parks put in for. And this is to do additional restoration work and also some trail building and trail planning for Pedro Point. So we're going to get together, I think it's next week, with those partners to figure out what our priorities are and our time frames and who's going to manage it. Also, another project, the Portola Trail, we're starting to talk about. This isn't a Measure A project right now, but did you know that it was in 2019, it will mark the 250th anniversary of Portola's expedition when they spied San Francisco Bay from Sweeney Ridge. And we could have a trail, a historic trail, that goes 50 miles and along there, traces their steps. They had 6 camps along the way. We could have 6 camps along the way. And Sanchez Adobe, we're going to do some work on the Sanchez Adobe, and Green Valley Trail's another project that'll be funded through Measure A in the next 2 years. We're going to get started on a master plan for the Corey, Wicklow, and Murata Surf area because we don't have a master plan for that. Also managing visitor capacity at Fitzgerald Marine Reserve. That's, implementing the master plan. It calls for managing visitor capacity. Complete the California Coastal Trail, East-West Connecting Trails, working with our partners with SFPUC. And then Caltrans has the bypass land, and it's required in the local coastal plan, the permit that they receive, that there be a linear park and trail plan for that piece of property through Montera. So that's something that's in our sights that we know we'll be working with partners to work in the future on that. And I don't know if you want me to take questions now or after.
Yeah.
Now, Sabrina.
If you're going to have questions, to make sure that the video picks them up, please come up to the microphone and say your phone projector.
Hi, thank you so much for coming tonight. Great presentation. And I was wondering, you're on your last slide, the one before this one, it listed some things, and managing visitation at the Fitzgerald Marine Reserve was on the list, and I know that is included in the Marine Reserve Master Plan, which, what was the year that was produced? That's getting kind of old now. So I was wondering if you could give us more information, because I've noticed, I think everybody's probably noticed that visitation, it has gone up, and there are a lot of people treading on the reef, and just would love to hear your thoughts on that. Thanks.
Sure. I wanted to bring it up tonight because I want you all to know that this is something that we're thinking about. We haven't started any work on it. We haven't started process, anything. So, if you have ideas about what you'd like to see or what you've observed over the years at Fitzgerald Marine Reserve, we're all ears. We want to hear from you. We're just getting started, and you're the first ones to hear about it. Any other questions? Yes.
Catherine Slater Carter. One of the needs that we have in this community is an area for off-leash dogs. I noticed it, the one area that most of us use, the Mavericks Road, is not addressed. It's owned by the Harbor District, and it's not even mapped in this. So I'm concerned. This is a report that was on the desk tonight.
Okay.
My other concern is that in this report, there are areas in El Granada, Moss Beach, and Montera in the neighborhoods that are mapped with dots for when cars were parked there. Are you actually considering using our neighborhood streets for parking, for access?
Actually, I can respond to that. That's actually our report that we coordinate on together. I'll be giving a presentation on part of that, so maybe I can respond to that when we get there. But
Okay, that would be great, because I think a lot of folks are going to be very concerned about neighborhood parking. I have a house on First Street, and that street is continually parked up, so guests can't park.
yeah, I can clarify that in the presentation.
Thanks for bringing that up. I knew bringing up a visitor capacity issue and would draw attention, and as it should, and that's why I think it's our responsibility to address it, so that we know we're going to need to do some better planning and some better management there. Okay, any other questions?
I know I brought this up not too long ago, I think to you, but maybe not. Way back when, I don't know, a decade ago when they were starting doing the Fitzgerald Marine Reserve Master Plan, there was a proposal to sort of more or less shut down the Moss Beach end of it and have the visitors go to the other end, which is by Pillar Point, to let the Moss Beach end of the area recover, and that seems to have died. Do you want to comment on why that idea was abandoned?
I can't comment on that because I wasn't here. I'm sorry. I
You
don't have the history. I'll look into it.
Yeah, if you could look into it and
Yeah.
let us know sometime why that was abandoned.
Sure. Yes.
Hi, Marlene. Bill Key on Moss Beach. So nobody else brought it up, but the first bullet on the first slide, the coastside needs assessment, 2002.
Yes.
That's a little long in the tooth. Probably the few people that did respond to that, probably not, 20% of them are still living here. So are you looking at spending all this Measure 8 funding? Are you going to update that and bring it up to like 21st century type of data?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because that's exactly why County Parks recommended, under agreement with Granada Community Services District, that we do this survey that was initiated just recently, because I know how long that ago it was. But what I want us to focus on right now is the Murata Wicklow Quarry. And we'll need to do a needs assessment. We'll need to do some good planning around that. But to open up the Midcoast needs assessment right now, that's not really in our plans. There's other unincorporated areas in San Mateo County that have not even had a needs assessment. I just have to be honest with you. There's other communities too that haven't even had that amount of attention or focus.
Can I make one of
Sure.
So, if I recall, it was either the first item or the second item of that 2002 needs assessment that the community was looking for a community center, and I did not see that listed anywhere in one of the objectives for county parks. So, and it's something we're constantly fighting for space out here. There's all sorts of groups that have nowhere to go. It would be nice for all the communities, not just the El Granada Community Service District, but Montero, Moss Beach, Miramar, and the rest of them, to know that. And most of the new stuff going on now is all focused down into Half Moon Bay and forces us to have to deal with the traffic on Highway 1, whether it's the library, the new gym, or any of those other accommodations that might be used for that. So we're sort of sitting up here with nothing, and I know from as far as the Midcoast Community Council goes, it's been 20 years we've been asking for these kind of things.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Just
a follow-up to my earlier question. So it sounds like the Parks Department is looking for input, and maybe this is already on the county's website. I don't know, I haven't looked. But I know that there's been a number of studies out on the reef to check to see what's going on with the health of the reef.
Mhm.
And I was wondering if maybe there's a way that the county could provide that information in a format that a non-scientist could understand, so that we could kind of get a baseline for the health of the area, and then that might help inform people about what steps might be needed to improve the situation. And just an idea.
Great idea. Yeah, I think that's something we could do. Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Marlene. A lot of stuff there. Questions myself, but I'll catch some of them later. Next up, we'll have Christine Fitzgerald from the GGNRA to give us an update. And one of the things she's going to talk about is indeed the parking and access study. Questions about.
Bear with me for a minute here,
Yeah.
I'll change this.
Sorry, we're sharing one computer for everything.
Next time it rains.
Not really expecting to.
Yeah, what do you, isn't it the law that you have to have your cell?
Sorry,
No, you
folks.
can leave the house.
All my work stuff. And if you don't speak really, really loud, just say really close to the mic.
All right. Well, thank you all for having me here tonight. As Dave said, my name is Christina Fitzgerald. I've met most of you, I think, before, but I represent GGNRA for all of our San Mateo County sites. So I'm a planner. I help as a land manager down here. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is sort of what we've been up to. It's funny hearing Marlene's contrast that county parks, having been here for 91 years, most of you know that GGNRA, on the coast side at least, we've only been here for about 3 years. So we don't have quite the breadth to provide, but we do have a lot of details on what we've been up to, at least at Rancho Corral de Tierra. So I think a lot of you saw my presentation last year as well, so I'm going to give you kind of an update on where we've been since then. So we acquired the property about 3 years ago. I'm going to give you an update on what we've been up to related to our trails and maintenance, what our resource management team has been up to, our stewardship and planning, at least now and then in the long term. And then I'm going to tell you about where we're headed. I think a lot of you are curious to know what's coming for Rancho. So our trails crew has been busy out there. I think several of you have been out hiking these trails and have noticed some differences finally that we've been able to make some improvements along the trails. So I'm just going to show you some examples of what they've been doing. This here is an example on the San Vicente Trail, which actually starts in Montera and then connects to Moss Beach. The before, during, and after pictures. So obviously a lot of the trails that were built here were not necessarily designed in a way to be sustainable. So they have a lot of drainage issues. They have a lot of social trails and routes that don't necessarily go where we'd like them to go in the long term. So in the meantime, we have about 16 miles of trails that our trail crew will be maintaining, and this is what they're doing. So in addition to drainage, they've also been out filling some of the gullies. This one is one of the worst trails, I think, of the park right now, the Alta Vista Trail. And worst, I say that as in just safety concerns, that it's extremely steep, it's extremely eroded, and we're having a lot of issues with it. So this is one we hope to reroute in the long term as part of our management plan. But in the meantime, they're doing what they can to at least try and fill some of these ruts, try and stabilize it a little bit so that we're not losing all this material. They've also been out brushing a lot of the trails. You've noticed now, for instance, the spine trail, that you can actually go to the top of the spine trail now, which you haven't been able to for several years. So you can now hike there, you can take your horse up there, you can ride your bike up there. It's actually a really beautiful trail now. This one is an example of the French Trail, which connects down in the Princeton by the Sea neighborhood. So the picture that's actually shown there is the area that's through the Cabrillo Unified School District. So we partnered with them. That little stretch of trail you see that connects the Flat Top Trail to the French Trail, that little stretch of green there actually went off our property there, but we realized that you can't necessarily connect from A to B unless you go through their property. So we partnered with the school district to brush that one as well. So you'll start seeing more of these type of improvements to make sure that we're able to connect all of our lands together. Trail crew's also been out installing some vehicle barriers. So riding motorcycles and vehicles is illegal at Rancho, even though people still occasionally do it. So we're still trying to stop that behavior. So in key locations where we know people are driving in, we've been putting up some more barriers. You'll see more of these going up in the future as well. But it's starting to help. We have heard from several people that it is decreasing in use. So the problem with it is that it's really just damaging a lot of our resources. So we're trying to make sure we keep people on the roads where they belong and keep the trails for other uses. So the last few things I'll mention just about what our trail crew is up to. So they also finished mowing. I think some of you may have seen that recently, that typically they've been mowing once a year. And I know there's typically a concern come July and August when it's really high fire season that people don't want to necessarily have vegetation that high next to their house. So our trail crew is actually trying to do a better job of it and keeping it low continuously. So you'll see them out there mowing from time to time. They are doing bird nesting surveys when necessary in bird nesting season. They're also preparing for their summer SCA crew. So last year we had a crew that was out working for about a month, which, as Marlene was saying, to the SCA Youth Corps, the SCA is really an awesome organization that helps partner with us and provide a lot of that extra labor that we can't necessarily do ourselves. So we'll have another crew out there probably for the month of July, I think it is. And then also preparing for National Trails Day. So this is my little plug, my little invitation to all of you for National Trails Day. We'll be hosting another event on June 6th. So the picture was from last year's National Trails Day event. We had a great turnout. But you're all invited to come out. It's a volunteer event. It'll be from 10 to 1:30. And it will be at the end of Park Street in Montera. We'll be meeting there. I'm going to be doing some work up on the ridge lines there. So please come join us if you'd like. So our natural resources team has also been doing a lot of work recently. They've been monitoring the wildlife that's out there. So I think several of you probably saw the picture we captured of a mountain lion during BioBlitz last year, which was really exciting for us to see. But just to give you a sense of what's more typical of what they see on these cameras, they see a lot of deer. The one on the top right there is a fox. On the bottom left, you can just see the two little eyes, that's a bobcat. And on the bottom right, we have a coyote. So this is more typical of what they're seeing. They do get an occasional mountain lion that crosses there, but this is typical what they're seeing, a lot of rabbits and other creatures as well. But it's really fun for us to be able to monitor. I mean, we have interns that go through the slides one by one, and it's kind of tedious for them, but they do find some occasional excitement like this.
So where's that camera?
There's several actually throughout the park, so they have them just in trail locations where they know there's wildlife. They've also been out removing invasive plants, so this was similar to what Marlene was showing, some pampas grass, jubata grass removal. That this is a beast of a plant that is definitely difficult to tackle, so it's going to be a continuous effort on our part. We actually have some funding for 2016, 17, and 18 to do a pretty large-scale removal, so stay tuned for more of that, but we're starting where we can. And once we're removing all these invasives, we're also out there planting some native grasses. So you see Georgia here highlighted in the front. So I'm going to introduce her in just a moment, but this is part of our resource team that's been out there planting. We've also been hosting some Park Academy classes. So if you're not aware of those, and you haven't seen that on the Parks Conservancy website, you can sign up for various Parks Academy classes that offer different hikes and tours like this. So this is one that was an Academy class on lichens. And then finally, for our resources, that they've been out there mapping vegetation, just trying to get a better sense for where the weeds are and what we want to remove and where we're trying to protect some native plants. They've been monitoring California red-legged frogs and butterflies. So this is a little frog here on the right there that they found out monitoring. And lead-in hikes. So we had various hikes that we've been doing with different groups. So Bay Nature was out there a few weeks ago, actually, We did one for the Committee for Green Foothills with Lenny. I believe it was last year we did that one. But if you have an organization that you'd like to introduce to Rancho, we're more than happy to take you out there and give you a more in-detailed resource hike like that as well. So just let me know. So for stewardship, I'd like to introduce our new community programs manager. So Georgia, if you wouldn't mind at least waving or standing up. This is Georgia Vasey. So Georgia has just started a couple of months ago, but she is our new community program manager. So if you come out for any of our volunteer days, you will see Georgia. She'll be down there leading the team. Our community programs have actually been engaged mostly in our Pacifica sites so far for San Mateo. So you've seen them at Malaga Ridge or at Maury Point, but we finally expanded now to include Rancho. Now that we have all this land down here, our program has finally expanded, which we're really excited about. So Georgia will be hosting monthly drop-in volunteer days on Saturdays. She and the trail crew will be partnering on that, but we'll have the schedule up so you can see where to meet on Saturday mornings. She's also meeting with the HEAL Project, which is the farm project that is based at Cabrillo Farms. It's helping partner with San Mateo County schools to make sure that kids understand more about organic farming. And also preparing for a mini BioBlitz. So I know a lot of you participated last year in our BioBlitz event with National Geographic. So we recognized at that time that a lot of people were really excited about the inventory, that people came out and they could go out and monitor and see what was out there. And people asked, can we do this all the time? But an event of that scale was a little bit too much, so we're going to do little mini BioBlitzes though instead. So Georgia will be leading that as well. So related to planning, so I think many of you have heard that Frank Dean has retired. He's now going to be leading the Yosemite Conservancy. So we have a new superintendent at GGNRA. This is Chris Leonards. She will be starting actually next week full-time. So we're really excited to have her. She has been our regional director for the Park Service for several years. So she comes with a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge about Golden Gate. So it's going to take her a little time to kind of get up to speed and make sure she's aware of everything that's happening, but she's going to be a great addition to our team. Our general management plan, many of you have participated in that as well. I know over the years we've provided a lot of feedback, so we are excited to announce that it's finally done. The record of decision was signed in January, and so this is our guiding document for the GGNRA for the next 20 years. So I left copies of it out on the table there that you're more than welcome to take a look. It's also online. It's actually really thick. There's 2 huge volumes of it, but it's basically our guiding document. So if you're curious to know what the park is planning to do anywhere throughout GGNRA, this is it. For regional coordination, so we've actually been partnering quite a bit with a lot of our different partner agencies. The first one I listed up here is the OHV grant. So this is a state parks program that they allow funding to be used for sites that either allow off-highway vehicle use or that have been damaged by off-highway vehicle use. So in our case, where off-highway vehicles are not permitted at Rancho, we know that there's a lot of damage that has been caused directly from them. So a lot of those erosion sites that I've shown you in these pictures, that's often caused by motorcycle damage and by vehicle damage. So we've applied for $1.3 million from this fund. So we will find out sometime in June if we are successful on that, but we're hopeful that we can at least get some funding to start making some of these improvements. We've also been coordinating with PUC on connections to Rancho. So I believe it was 2 weeks ago, they had a hearing, the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, for opening the watershed. There's a sort of movement that a lot of people are really excited about the idea of opening the watershed to public use. So we are partnering with them to at least support what we can do, that we have an easement over the entire watershed that is a scenic easement and a scenic and recreation easement. So we do have some authority at least in acknowledging and approving what it is that they're doing with the watershed. So we do support that idea. There's some trails that we have that would connect from Rancho to Sweeney Ridge, so we're really excited about that possibility. The last one on here, Marlene mentioned as well, the Portola Trail planning. So this is something that the commemoration of it will be in 2019, but we're looking at options of how we can potentially designate this as something more substantial, including possibly making it a national historic trail. So we're just starting the sort of exploratory phases of that, but we think there's a good possibility that this is something of national significance, not just of local or regional. So the parking demand study, this is the one that was mentioned earlier. So this is a study that the agencies on the coast side undertook over the past year. I presented this to MCC in December of 2014. So several of you have already seen sort of the bulk of this, this content. But for the rest of you that haven't seen it yet, I wanted to give you an update on what the report was, what we studied, and what we plan to do with it from here. So the purpose of the study really was to take a look at the Highway 1 safety and mobility recommendations. There were several items that were identified there as need for further study. And one of those was the idea of what's happening with the parking and really the visitor use of the region. So we decided to evaluate the parking demand for the coastside destinations, and this was really focusing more on open space destinations. It wasn't every single place on the coast side that you can visit. It was really county parks, state parks, GGNRA, all the open space destinations where a lot of people are visiting. We were hoping that this would then inform our trailhead planning for GGNRA. So when I talk more about the Rancho Management Plan in a minute, you'll understand sort of where we are in that process. But the goal of this is really to find out, where do we need to put parking? Do we need additional parking? How much parking do we need? Or are there places where we can actually share parking with other agencies? And then the last piece of it here, consider opportunities to enhance access and minimize congestion. I think that's something everybody can agree on the coast side would be a good thing. So I'm not going to go through every single detailed step of what this study was. The study was just released on Monday, so I'm excited that it's hot off the press and that you can all take a look at it. It will be up on websites in various locations. We'll have it up on the MCC website, I hope, so that you can take a look from there. But the scope of it was really to look at all the different studies that have been going on. I know that many of you are familiar with Connect the Coast Side and other projects that are really looking at transportation issues along the coast side. But this one was really to look at just parking and visitation for open space destinations. So we reviewed the relevant studies. We did a pretty robust data collection. We did find that there were some holes at the very end. I'll talk about that in a minute. But we did data collection basically from Devil Slide all the way down to Half Moon Bay, finding out where people are parking, where they're parking legally, where they're parking illegally, where they want to be parking. We did, from that, find a visitor and parking demand forecast. So we look at what do we expect is going to happen then based on what we know now, and what all the growth we expect to happen based on what's there currently and what we anticipate is coming. What do we think the forecasts are going to look like in 2030 and in the year 2040? And then looking at what the issues and opportunities were, that where can we potentially start to mitigate some of these problems now. So this is the best we can do in terms of summarizing the data. I don't expect you to actually look at all these numbers, but the one place I want to call your attention to is the highlighted kind of tannish row near the top there that says the study area public lands total. So what this does is tries to summarize where we observed all the people parking and how much parking there was. It observes how much they were over capacity or under capacity, whether it was occupied, what time of day they were occupied. We went through a very robust sort of analysis of that and summarized basically that there was a range. We didn't want to necessarily come up with just one number, but there's a range of where potentially this growth could occur. On the low end, we used forecasts that were related mostly to ABAG projections for what population growth is. On the high end, we were looking at if all of the sites that we currently have on the coast side continue to grow at the same rate that they've been growing over the last 7 to 10 years, this is what the high end would look like. So, come over here and show you on the 2030 forecast then you can see the excess demand for formal parking on the low end was around 77. So what that means is that we think that even if things continue to go the way they have been, in the year 2030 you're still going to need an additional 77 parking spaces. On the high end you'll need somewhere around 290. As that continues to grow for 2040 forecast, on the low end, you're looking at around 108 spaces, and on the high end, you're looking at 560 spaces. This is only looking really at the formal parking capacity. So this doesn't actually include the informal parking where people are parking all over the road, all over sides of the streets. That's included in the report, all that analysis, but what this just captures is if you had formal parking spaces for this many vehicles, here's how much you're going to need in the future if things continue to go the way they're going to go, or the way they've been growing. So obviously, we don't necessarily want to go out there and build 600 new parking spaces. That's not what anybody here wants, but we all want to figure out how do we minimize the congestion. So our next steps, that was really just phase 1 of the study. Phase 1 was just data collection, analysis. It wasn't making any grand recommendations on what we should do tomorrow and how we should fix this right away. It was, let's look first at what the baseline is and figure out what the problem is. What we're really looking at too for the forecast for the future. So our next steps, we know that based on some feedback we received that there are some places that we missed in our data collection. So we are going to go back and collect that data later this summer. So our data collection that we did last year was in July and August. We want to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples. So we're going to go back and count some additional sites this summer and see what we missed there and how that fits into the rest of the analysis. We're going to continue to monitor the changes then too, that right now what we have is basically a growth pattern over time. From the last 7 to 10 years, we know this is the way it's going. So we're going to continue to monitor sites like Double Slide, where Double Slide, the initial year of opening, had significantly higher volumes than people expected. They thought the parking was going to be much lower and realized there's a high demand for that site. So we're going to monitor that and say, was that just because it was the first year, or was that because that's really a high demand site and it's going to stay like this? So we'll continue to monitor changes and see how that affects our data. The next big step, I think, is to enhance the alternative modes. Continue finding funding for the parallel trail. Continue finding ways to get people to ride their bikes and walk to these sites instead of parking. Continuing investing in transit. So north of Double Slide, there's a shuttle that Pacifica runs that is not very well utilized right now, but I think with some increased marketing, it really could be a much better, much higher ridership for that line. So something similar for the coast side, if we had a shuttle that actually would allow people to ride to several of these destinations, it would cut down on how many vehicles you have on the street. Evaluate shared parking options. Again, I said we don't want to necessarily go out and build a new 600-car parking lot. So where are there places that parking currently exists that we might be able to share? So if GGNRA is building new parking, it doesn't necessarily have to be GGNRA parking. It can be coastside parking that can be used for multiple destinations. And the last one, we consider this new parking as part of the Rancho plan. The reason that we've been leading this study is because we're the new kid on the block, and we're the ones that are making some changes now in terms of the park. We have new visitors that are coming to the area because of Rancho, and so we want to make sure we're doing something that's responsible for the residents on the coast side, but also solving a problem that we have the ability and funding to do right now. So to let you know where we're headed after this study, so just a couple of things. The National Trails Day event I mentioned, that's our first opportunity that we hope you can come out and visit us and join us for our volunteer day. We'll be doing some more centennial planning. You may have heard that our centennial is coming up next year, so the National Park Service is turning 100 years old, so there's a lot of events that will be happening about that. There's a lot of efforts to find your park, really go out and enjoy your park. So we'll be talking to you more about that. We'd love to hear your ideas, that if you have ideas of how you want to help us celebrate 100 years of Park Service, that we're all ears. And then this last one, the Rancho Unit Management Plan. I know that several of you have been involved in some of our preliminary discussions leading up to this, and so I'm going to give you more info now on the timeline of where this management plan is going. So what's included in a unit management plan? So the reason we're calling it a unit management plan is that it's basically one step down from the general management plan. That this is such a large site and has so many different components to it, and we're kind of starting from scratch in a way that we can really be strategic in what we're doing. So our unit management plan is going to have several different components to it, including trails. So right now we have the 16 miles of trails. I showed you some images of what we're already maintaining. But we know that there's some of them that are redundant, some of them that could probably go away. There's some new connections that we've heard from people that they'd like to be able to connect between different areas. So we'll look at that, just how to remove old ones and add new ones. The amenities, restrooms, parking, benches, trash, signage, they're all going to be minimal. I can tell you that much, that if you look at our general management plan, it says basically that it's going to be recreation-based facilities here with very light on the land amenities. So it may have some benches here and there, but it's not going to be this big, robust new development plan whatsoever. It's going to be very minimal. Similar with restrooms, parking, that we're trying to make sure that this fits within the context of the community. This isn't just going to be one size fits all for National Park Service. This is very custom for this site alone. The resources will be looking more at vegetation management, looking at areas that are high fuel danger, looking at areas where we can start to remove more of the pampas grass, how we can plant some more native grasses. The equestrian areas, so we do have 4 operations that lease land from the National Park Service. So we will be maintaining some type of equestrian facilities there. We don't know exactly yet in what capacity or how large they'll be, but that will be included in the management plan as well. That's required by their leasing law. And then the last one on here, maintenance, making sure that this is sustainable in the long term. As you're all aware that our funding is somewhat limited in the National Park Service, and so making sure what we're putting in is something that requires minimal maintenance and that it's something that's not going to require large capital investments over time. unfortunately, the text at the top there is not quite legible, but this is our draft schedule, and I emphasize this is subject to change. So this is based on what we currently know, but it also could change pending funding. It could change depending on other priorities that shift around. But this is, as of right now, the goal of what we have in terms of our schedule for the Rancho Unit Management Plan. So we established an IDT, which is an interdisciplinary team, internally this past fall. So that's people that represent our law enforcement, maintenance, cultural resources, natural resources, planning. Basically all divisions of the Park Service are on this team now to make sure that we have representation from all angles internally. What we're doing right now is data collection. So the application we put in for the OHV use, a lot of what we included in there was data collection and analysis of the erosion issues. So that's included in what this unit management plan would be, is data collection of things like this. We'll go to internal scoping this summer, which basically works through our internal process to make sure that we all know what this unit management plan should include. And then we'll bring it to public scoping. So we'll bring it to you sometime later this fall or this winter, depending on availability and schedules. But we're hoping sometime this fall and winter we can bring it to all of you to find out, what do you want in this park? This is your park. So what would you like to see here? Would you like to see new trails? Do you want to see expanded equestrian operations? Do you want to see them smaller? Do you want to see areas for a stewardship center? So what do you want to see here? And then the last two are sort of depending on how far we get throughout the rest of scoping and our environmental process, that we'd like to have our biological opinion, have agency input by the end of 2018, and have the environmental assessment and the, what we call FONSI, it's a finding of no significant impact, hopefully, by the end of 2019. So I get this is kind of a lot of information, and it's subject to change, like I said, but this is, in an ideal world, the direction we'd like to go on our timeline. So what can you expect as far as the unit management plan? It's not going to be a big launch this year. It's going to be sort of a small, like slower rumble. So you'll see more walks and talks. We've already met with several of you in smaller groups, but you'll see more of this type of events, getting people out there and really understanding what the resources are. So that way when we're making decisions about where do we want to put a trail, people understand, well, we can't put it here because this is a very sensitive habitat. So just getting people to be more informed about what's out there currently. We'll still continue with the monthly volunteer days that Georgia will be leading. We'll have some evening neighborhood get-togethers. So I have a sheet that's out on the table there that asks, do you have a neighborhood group that you would like to meet with us and talk about what your concerns are? So we're more than happy to come out and talk to you, whether it's at your homeowners association or various groups that you have already, that we're happy to come and talk to you about it, to give you kind of the overview of what to expect, but also to hear your input specifically and your concerns. More meetings with stakeholders and agencies, so getting this more on the partner level. So we do meet regularly with county parks, with state parks, with all of our neighbors to make sure that we're all informed. So we'll continue with those. And then to initiate Mind Mixer. I think a lot of you are familiar with that as well through the Connect the Coast side, but it's a way for us to have more of an online platform that we can all continue a dialogue about what's happening with Rancho or what you'd like to see there. So with that, I will take any questions.
And a reminder, go to the center line if you want to ask your question.
Sabrina?
A lot of questions. Thank you for the great presentation. So I know a lot of people are really excited about the SFPUC property possibly becoming a trail, and it sounds like that's getting closer to happening. Could you talk a little bit more about the involvement there potentially, and then also wanted to mention that, I wanted to mention that there's, you know, as probably a lot of people here know, a lot of interest in having connectivity from the, what will be a trail there eventually, to Sawyer Camp. And of course Sweeney Ridge, you know, just kind of connecting that whole thing, because you can do the entire loop on your bicycle, and to have a trail that would connect where you don't have to ride on Highway 92, which I've done a lot, and you're going downhill fast, and there's just, it's very tight there. If there was a trail connection to Sawyer Camp where you don't have to be on the highway, it would just make a fantastic loop for bicyclists and pedestrians. Thanks.
I agree. So our involvement with PUC, as I said, we have an easement that's over the area. So we do have at least some responsibility and authority to review their plans and make sure that they're consistent with what the terms of our easement are. So part of that does include trail connectivity. So our GMP does include trail access, saying we would like to connect Sweeney Ridge to Rancho. We would like to have east-west connections across the watershed. We would like to make sure that people can get to where they want to go without compromising the safety and security of the watershed. So what was exciting about the hearing a few weeks ago is that it seems like that's the direction that a lot of people agree with and support. So we'll continue to work with the PUC on that. The more that they work on their plans, they bring them to us for review, and we continue to coordinate in that way. We do meet with them annually, at least to review all their proposed projects coming up, and then we go out in the field at least once or twice a year with them to make sure we see those connections as well. So we'll continue to do that and support the idea of opening it. Yes?
My name is Patrick Tierney. Was wondering about who has the authority over the Montara Mountain Road. Is that split up between different agencies? And also what the plan is for Montara Mountain Road in the long term, and will it be maintained as a multi-use rather than hiking only trail?
So this is the one that connects, I believe, from the yellow gate at the end of Highway 1, is that correct?
Yes.
So that one is actually on state park, so maybe Joanne can respond to that when she presents.
But I mean, is the entire Montara Mountain Road to the radio towers and everything at the top is all state park?
There's a portion of it actually that does go through Rancho. We intend to keep all of our trails multi-use where possible, so but that will depend largely on state parks plans because we're making sure they're consistent with adjacent trails.
Kim Dale, can you define what the current dog plan is in the park?
Sure. The dog plan is still in the process, and so right now it's in Washington. So it's out of our hands at this point in time. We will have a better understanding of what's coming sometime later this year. So we're expecting either summer or fall, there will be a release of our draft rule. So at that point in time, you'll have another chance to review it and see what the changes are that were approved. But at this point, it's out of our hands, so we're waiting until we get approval from Washington to release the draft rule.
Just regarding, hi, I'm Christine Corwin. Regarding the Rancho Unit Management Plan, I'm kind of assuming that all the dog stuff is taken care of in the dog management plan,
Exactly.
and that's why, okay.
Exactly. Dogs will not be addressed in this plan.
Okay,
because
just
it's
checking.
addressed independently in
Okay.
the dog plan. Yep.
What was your answer?
The dog plan will address all of the issues related to dogs, so we will incorporate that into the unit management plan, but it's not going to address that separately in here. Yes?
Yeah, my concern is about paid parking in Montara,
Mm-hmm.
around that area. Can you tell me, are you working with the transit authorities about maybe doing shuttles? Because we just need to kind of control what the traffic as is right now before we start paving everything, moving everything.
So did you say paved or paid? Just want to clarify, did you say paved as in P-A-V-E-D or paid as in cost? Paved. Okay, so paving parking. So as I said, in terms of the actual parking designs, none of that has been discussed whatsoever, with the exception of it will be context sensitive. We're not just going to go out there and start putting down asphalt and paving lots everywhere we can. What we're hoping to do is use existing parking where possible. So in places like the Harbor District, where we know that there's a large parking area that maybe is not used at the same times that other areas could use it. So could we potentially share parking there and run a shuttle somewhere else to other sites? That's the kind of thing we're looking at in the next phase of this study. So we don't intend to go out and just pave parking lots anywhere right now.
Well, my concern is because how the parking is widening on Highway 1 in Montara because of Caltrans. First, they were going to make parking on the side of Highway 1. Then they dumped all their product there, so they had to move it and level it out, and they made parking, and we just don't need that.
Yeah, I absolutely understand your concern. So I think that really the big push there is to make sure we're investing in alternative modes, making sure that we're continuing to do the bicycle and pedestrian investments and invest in transit. That I think that's really the way that's going to minimize the congestion down here, because otherwise you're going to need those minimum 600 parking spaces by 2040, and we don't want to see that either. So I think it's continuing to invest in transit. we are partnering with them. We do meet with Samtrans, and so we are more than happy to initiate those conversations. The good thing about having a National Park Service down here now as well is that we can tie into additional funding sources that you weren't previously eligible for.
Have you considered tolls for visitors?
You know, in some locations, we obviously do charge for visitation to national parks. We have no intention of doing that down here. We did discuss, in the report, there is a whole section that discusses paid parking and looking at ways that tries to minimize people driving. We know that that's not necessarily a popular topic for some people as well. They don't necessarily want to see paid parking down here. So I think it's going to be a lot of give and take and some compromise in certain angles, but I think that overall it's still investing in transit is a better option.
Well, I would invite people that are, would not want that to live here on the weekend or live
Right.
here when there's a function going on and see how fun it is to get the groceries.
No, it's people that on the coast that have told us that they don't necessarily want to see paid parking too. So I think it's a balance for the community. It's not necessarily us making that decision. Other questions? Yes.
And forgive my naivete, maybe you explained it earlier, but I was just wondering, so if you could clarify, my name is Erin Dyson, sorry. So what's the difference between, so we've got Golden Gate National Recreation Area and then Golden Gate National Parks Conservancy, and then the National Park Service, like I'm a little bit confused how they all...
Everybody is, it's okay.
Okay.
So the National Park Service is the land manager that actually owns the land. The Parks Conservancy is the nonprofit arm that basically supports the National Park Service. So we work very closely together. I'm actually a hybrid. I work for both agencies, and so I'm half in both. So it's a little bit complicated the way that works, but Park Service owns it. Parks Conservancy is the nonprofit that supports it. GGNRA is the name of the park unit that we all work in. So it's the Golden Gate National Recreation Area.
Okay, great.
Does that
Thank
help?
you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so if anybody has other questions, I'll be here for a while after. I also left a bunch of my business cards out there, and I also left 2 sign-up sheets. One of them is for if you have groups that would like to meet with us to talk about the unit management plan, please sign up. We also have a sign-up sheet for our newsletter. We have 2 newsletters, one that's specific to Rancho and mostly planning updates like this, and one that's more for stewardship for all of our San Mateo sites. So you're welcome to sign up for both. Yes, Sabrina.
Really quick, I haven't had a chance to look at the plan that Catherine Slater-Carter had earlier. Are you planning to give a presentation on that at the Midcoast Community Council at a future meeting?
So I did present that one in December, and it hasn't changed substantially since then. So you can take a look at that and see the report. If there's a desire to have it come back, I'm happy to come back and present again. But
so the final version's pretty much the same as what we saw before.
Right, it's just been adjusted slightly just in terms of feedback from people, but it's not necessarily a dramatically different report from the December presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Christine. And we're going to have a brief period here while I play AV technician again. And then, meanwhile, maybe Joanne Kurbowitz can introduce herself from State Parks, and I'll try and get her presentation up. Right.
It was really my strategic decision to get most people to leave. So, okay. We're doing a short person accommodation on this. My name is Joanne Krabavas, and I'm actually a senior environmental scientist for California State Parks. And unfortunately, we have very small staffs, and we get to wear lots of different hats. So there will be questions that you have that will better not be answered by me. And I will be happy to take those and find someone who's better to answer them if they're areas outside of my area of expertise. I really enjoy the opportunity to come here. I really enjoy meeting with this group. I think that it's an excellent, this has evolved into an excellent forum. And I'm also really glad to go after the other 2 presenters from National Park Service and County Parks so that I can kind of say, yeah, us too, rather than trying to recapitulate things. Although us too, but less. Let me talk about just a little bit about what is coming up in the near term. and I'm not Mac savvy, so I might just like, try and do Control-Alt-X or something soon. The most exciting thing I think is that when you look at the map and you see that kind of blank area there, this part that's like a different color, well, that's going to no longer be a different color really soon. And I think it's just the culmination, and again, a lot of the people here are some of the people who have been involved in making the bypass not happen. And I think we can only celebrate that, we cannot celebrate that too often, because I think the committed individuals who took a stand and decided that there was a better way to improve the highway that didn't involve going through that part of the coast. They said it couldn't be done, but it was. And I think that's a great lesson for everybody, especially as we're celebrating Earth Day. So I can't speak to what's happening with the linear park part of it. Marlene did bring that up briefly, but I can speak to the part that's within the McNee Ranch section of Montara State Beach. That will become state parkland. And it's not as if it's been obvious that it wasn't, but it certainly will make it easier for us to do some of our continued management projects, including work on the road. And we can talk about that a little bit later. The other project, and I have talked to you about it before last year, and that is the idea of one slightly better parking lot, which is not going to help that much. I noticed from the table that McNee Ranch and Montara State Beach are at 137% parking capacity already. And of course, that's not every day. As you all know, we have the boom days, and then there's a lot of days that's not at that. But right about where the Highway 1 sign there is where we do propose an improvement to a facility. And this is the existing lot. And, a lot of reasons to feel that this is not being used as well as it could be. On a good day, it's playing Jenga to get in and out of there. And I think we don't have to expand the capacity necessarily, just to make it a whole lot easier for people to park and get in and out of this lot. And then this is the existing stairway. And we could improve that a little bit. Unfortunately, as you know, the sand, when I first moved to the coast, it still never ceases to amaze me how you'll walk a beach and there'll be, the pilings will be barely showing, and you'll come back a week later and the sand is 8 feet down. And that just never ceases to amaze me, but it's pretty obvious at some of these coastal stairs. And some of that stuff we may not be able to deal with, but at least maybe indeed just viewing these as sometimes temporary improvements, because they're not going to last forever. But we got money as a mitigation from the Caso Busan oil spill for access improvements. Now, I had really hoped when I came to talk to you about these plans last year that right now you'd be parking in here, but unfortunately, we haven't gotten to the stage of actually moving dirt, but hopefully we are soon at the stage of asking for permits and environmental review. And I know that some folks, don't want to see any additional formalized parking, but I'm hoping that we can do this in a really nice, sensitive way. One of the things that I really want to see out of this is that we're a lot better at dealing with a runoff. I've worked on projects on other areas on the bluff where we've successfully built some seasonal wetlands out of the runoff and actually enhanced the area. We may not be growing red-legged frogs, but we're growing a whole lot of tree frogs, and they're pretty cool too. And so we're thinking of being able to do that with the runoff here. And we also hope to install some ADA picnic tables, so at least there's going to be a destination spot. So even if you can't go down that relatively challenging staircase, you will be able to have a picnic area and a viewing area. And so I think that will be a net improvement for all. So
I'm having difficulty reading the print up there. Can you explain the idea here a little bit? It looks like a parking closer to the highway. Is that a drive around or?
Yeah, it's pretty. That's a conceptual design, so it's not the actual formalized design. But the idea is just to create a way you can get around that lot instead of just having just a square where people sort of randomly park. It's going to define parking spots. Is that you're looking troubled? Maybe I can
Could you just go over and just point out? what
Sure,
the things
but
are?
then I'm walking away from my microphone.
Take the microphone with you if you want.
I can? Okay.
Just
I've always wanted to do.
point at the speaker.
I've always wanted to do the whole. Did you see the Country Music Awards? I want to grow up to be a country music singer. It's just too cool. Okay, which part do you want me to point at? So this is just, drive in. There will be a way to drive around, within just the lot footprint. And these are marked spots, so that instead of people, again, randomly parking, it'll be defined. And then these bits are the conceptual idea of where water would drain and we'd create through that runoff some seasonal wetlands.
Okay, so that is a expansion, capacity expansion.
Well, it's a size, if you take the footprint, and the reason it's slid a little bit this way is to make sure it's not within Caltrans property, so it'll be all on state park property. The actual size is not significantly bigger, I mean maybe a tad, but not a range of magnitude. And the number of cars, I could get you a number. It's kind of hard to say what existing capacity is now because it's that sort of random parking thing.
It looks like you're closing the entrance down so that it provides more parking spaces, and then you're going to plant along there to kind of close that in a little?
Well, to tell you the truth, we're probably not going to get involved on the Caltrans right-of-way because that's not within our purview. We could discuss this. I think part of the idea, and again, this is a very conceptual design, so if you have specific things you want or don't want to see in this, I'm happy to take those back to the engineers. Part of this originally was not necessarily to create, to maybe be able to gate it off, and that was mainly for security reasons. Because that is a lot that people access 24 hours. So there was some kind of thought that if we could create something that had the possibility of having a gate, that could be an additional advantage in terms of impacts from things going on after hours. So
are you talking about paving that?
Yes, and I know some people really don't like paving.
Why?
However, why paving? Because it is way less expensive to maintain.
Yeah,
and that's
much more toxic.
Yeah, no, it's way more expensive and I'm not sure, I know that there are concerns about runoff from it, but I've never seen that is much worse considering all the things that come out of cars that are part of the runoff problem. But the good news is that if you do this kind of filtration correctly, you're capturing anything in those seasonal wetlands. Yeah, and I agree. Well, but hopefully, that's what we do go to the engineers for.
Did you want to do your presentation and ask for questions after?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
It's a short presentation. We can get it all over with at once.
Just making sure.
And plus, I really do appreciate, because my goal, we really feel strongly that the improvement here is going to be a whole lot better than what's there now. But I'm really open to feedback on questions. And I know the paving, non-paving is one we've dealt with, that is always a concern. And I've been convinced by the one equipment operator that we have for San Mateo County, that, for state parks for San Mateo County, that his inability to get back there and regrade this in a way that really keeps it up. I mean, it's really hard to keep grading something and not just keep losing material time after time after time and just creating a bog. And I'd rather see it done right and use the runoff for something, use the runoff in a way that both treats that and does something useful for habitat. But, this is not a done deal. This is the conceptual design and it's coming out there.
I would urge you to do the paving with anything except asphalt. Because asphalt is the absolute worst possible material to use, especially near the ocean. It's oil with rocks in it.
And I'll pass that back to the designers. There are some alternatives. Unfortunately, cost is a factor. So, we have a grant, and the grant only goes so far, and some of the alternatives are a whole lot more expensive. But that's, well, and that's good if we can do it. But again, our piggy bank is very small, and on this project we only have so much. Okay. So,
I wanted to ask a question about that lot.
Sure, come on.
So is this parking lot, is this considered an access point for McNee Ranch State Park, which is a little bit north at that gate?
Not really.
Okay, because that parking lot there that's at the gate is
Woefully inadequate.
only like 5 cars or something.
It's 7, I believe, but but not if they're parked sideways. Yeah.
I was just going to ask if there was any possible plan in the work to include some kind of access trail from this lot. I know there's that road goes over a large culvert or something, and I was just wondering if there's any plan for an access trail from there to the gate at the bottom of McNeil Ranch State Park.
Not right now, but one of the beautiful things of working with our partners is that we can look at alternatives that maybe are not on state park land for capturing some of the parking that deals with the other uses. So right now, if you're asking me what we have planned, this is the only thing that's planned for state. That's ours. We're working with the county, of course, on the Green Valley and maybe on some additional parking improvement at Graywell Cove. But, right now, this is the only thing that's happening.
Okay.
But duly noted that that's a need, and that's another one that if you pass by there and look at the parking, you can see that the use there exceeds the parking availability. Any other questions on this?
When you were talking about the picnic tables, is this part of this, or?
Yeah, what we're proposing is, you can see a couple little square things, and that's a little, it'll be a accessible picnic table. And, again, the idea there is to create a destination. And,
my concern is people come to the coast because it's not built up. And starting to make all these picnic tables, you said 77 or how many picnic tables all over, it's like.
No, there's good.
All the natural flowers and everything are going to be trampled on.
The point's well taken, and I think last year,
all the agapanthus that grow wild there and bloom, it's just.
Yeah.
Kill it.
No, the point's well taken, and this is cited specifically in an area. I don't know if you've looked at this specific area, but if you can see if you look at an aerial photo, that this is an area that previously was agriculture, and so the vegetation in this spot has already been really well disturbed. If you get closer to the coast, you can see the area where the agriculture stopped, and the vegetation is much different. So if you pass by there, I passed by there today, and it's about 75% mustard, and the rest is poison hemlock. So I don't feel bad about disturbing this particular location. But your point is very well taken. And I think I told you guys that last year that when I first came up with this idea as a way, because I just see this as something that needs to be fixed. It's not good the way it is now. And we can talk about ways to fix it, but there had been 30 years ago proposal for a parking lot that was to cover the entire bluff. Now that was obviously not a very good idea, and it's a good thing it didn't happen.
Well, this is a start, though.
I certainly understand.
Things that my problem is that you're expanding the parking lot, but the county needs to deal with the traffic that's here now, instead of expanding and welcoming more traffic in. It's not being dealt with. The major problem is the traffic.
And fortunately, that's already on the radar of everybody involved here, including the parking and the traffic go together, and those things are on everybody's radar.
I'd just like to address the issue of the table as a long-time coast resident who can no longer walk down to the beach. I often go to the state parks down the coast and sit on the tables at the top while my family is hiking down. So I really think, especially because of the aging of the population and everything, there is a great need for destinations or whatever you want to call it, places where people can go and share the experience with their family if they're not able to go down the broken steps to the beach. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm glad that's part of it. And I came to this from, I had a very good friend with MS, and it taught me how much we needed places that you could get to if you couldn't hike. So that's this, and I gave you that.
But my question is why is that just important now? Why wasn't it important before? It is an important issue, but why is it just now important and not before?
Yeah. I think, yeah. I I just look forward to, you know, I think, as I say, I think what we have there now is not working. I'd like to fix it, and I'd like to make it a little bit better. We do have this grant opportunity that, again, I had hoped we'd be done by now. So I'm really hoping that by the time the engineers do get some designs out, and, you know, if you do have any specific feedback, please do, because, I mean, it's not designed yet. I mean, you know, we can, and feel free to tell me everything from don't build it at all to put in more picnic tables. I'll take all those things back, and we'll see what we can come out of it. And then it will go through an environmental process, so you'll have your looks at it then, but I'd really rather hear from you now while we're still in the process of coming up with a formal design. So anybody who's interested, please do get back to me. Okay, well, I didn't have time to put in a lot of cool slides about some of the cool things we're doing, but I do have a couple of cool slides, which I'll show nonetheless. And that is, I'm really inspired. I'm a biologist by training, and we just had Coastal Wildflower Day, and it was held in Half Moon Bay, but we featured a lot of Montera flowers, so don't worry, you are all included. And it is exciting to get to focus on that side of things, of just the beautiful resources here. This is one of my favorite plants on the bluff. It's a lupin that it's varicolored, Lupinus varicolor, but some people call it, one of the common names is party-colored lupin, which I really like. And it does speak a little bit to this ongoing stewardship work. One of the great things about, again, working in a community of other park partners is that there is a synergy from the work we're doing together. The best example so far is the Jubata grass, where indeed the county, we share a contractor with the county, and on the days when it's too windy to be doing work on the intermediate coast, he's able to come in and do work in McNee Ranch, and so therefore we all save money because we're keeping that contractor employed even when he maybe can't work in parts of the area. So, and I do think we will get Jubata grass. It stays put, and it's really easy. You know, I mean, it's hard, but it's a lot easier than some things, other things that we're going after from the non-native plant world. So working all together, I think, you know, we will actually get that one of these days. Of course, we need the little drones and a few other technological tools, but we'll get there. Also on stewardship, you may see a few more folks out there from state parks working on some of these non-native species, because we're trying to do a little bit better job of consolidating some of our efforts throughout the Santa Cruz district, which includes folks from Santa Cruz maybe coming up here to do a little more work. So you may see more folks out there. Two things we're going after this month, actually. The biggest one right now is a good time to go after some of the brooms, and so you're going to see people out there this month, maybe even tomorrow. My crew is going to be out going after some of the broom out there. So you will see, hopefully you'll see more folks out there doing some of the stewardship work. And then my second favorite blooming right now is the Douglas iris, and you do see a lot of that on the bluff in various places. And the other thing about having Coastal Wildflower Day is that it was a great opportunity to introduce the benefits of using natives, and of course one of the benefits of natives is their drought tolerance. So this is an excellent time to catch people's attention about why landscaping with native plants can have a net benefit. Okay, so that's all I have, and you're welcome to ask any other questions we haven't covered, which I may or may not answer.
Hey, Joanne. Would you go back to the map of the coast side? And I've got a couple of questions about trails. Chris Pereira and his trails crew for the Santa Cruz district, we're in the Santa Cruz district, by the way, has been doing terrific work, and he doesn't have anywhere near the staff that he needs. And once the Green Valley Trail gets done, then immediately south is the Gray Whale Cove Trail, and that's going to take some real work. It's not handwork. And I'm wondering if you have any sort of, leverage with Chris. They've done one really terrific project, the Montera Mountain Trail work out of McNee to where the boundary with county parks is. And that was done over the last couple of years. It's going to take that kind of work on the Gray Whale Cove Trail as well. Is there any chance that Chris and his crew will get up here?
As you know, the hardest problem of sharing one trail crew for a large park district is, getting on the list. Some of this stuff would happen with money. I mean, if we go, and again, working together, maybe we can find some external funding that could cause create the opportunity to do more work here. We do have a volunteer, I don't know if any of the folks from the volunteer trail crew are here today, but, okay. But, they've been doing a yeoman's job with, unfortunately not as much support as it'd be good to give them as well. But the point is well taken. We have just the backlog for trail work is, really, really unfortunate.
Do you need more volunteers?
Always. But that's one of the things we need to do, and again, I'm not the right person to answer this because, I'm always willing to let's put on a show. But I need to get, the trail folks involved in setting some priorities that can be accomplished with volunteers, and then, try and build that program. It's been great so far as the folks, again, with limited support and a lot of just hard labor, have been doing a lot of important things on the mountain. But it'd be great to, do a little more to organize that and to make more projects happen. So, and no, I'm not going to put on a show. But I do want to be a country singer when I grow up. Actually, either that or the backup singer. I really like them. They're always cool. Any other questions? Great, you let me off easy. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Joanne. And all of these presentations will wind up on the Midcoast Community Council website. I don't think we had any of them up ahead of time because they came in pretty late. All right, we have Leonard Warren next from Granada Community Services District, and we're going to have one person after that from the Ridge Trail Association.
Well, Dave doesn't have to play AV jockey because I don't have any graphics. This will be really brief. Mostly I'm here to answer any questions that there might be. Can we get the lights so I can read the staff memo here? At what should be our regular meeting from last week, but it's actually tomorrow night. I think it's about the third or fourth item on the agenda, although I was approached during this meeting to move it up, so I don't know how that's going to go. We will have the results of the survey that were sent out. So it was a 4-page survey mailed on February 20th to 2,283 households. And our district doesn't have addresses, so the addresses were obtained from other sources, and the county and Recology, the solid waste contractor. And so 48 of those came back as undeliverable. But overall, with 2,235 households we estimate received the survey, and we got back 563 hard copy plus 68 on the web, so that's a total response rate of 28.3%, which is very high for a survey like this. I was told to expect 10%, so it's a pretty good turnout. So at the meeting tomorrow night, Professor Patrick Tierney, who's right here and one of our constituents, I think in Miramar. And let me emphasize that it's called the Granada Community Services District, but it serves all of Miramar, although we don't have Parks and Rec Authority within the city limits of Half Moon Bay. So only the unincorporated part of Miramar is served by Parks and Rec. And so it's all of unincorporated Miramar, El Granada, Princeton, Clipper Ridge. I think I got everything. Personally, I don't know any of the survey results yet. We'll hear it tomorrow night from Professor Tierney. He is a professor at San Francisco State University Parks and Recreation Department. The last thing that I'll mention is the original plan with LAFCO approval was that we would shift $50,000 in the first year of our property tax revenue from subsidizing sewer service charges over to the Parks and Rec function. And that we would raise the sewer service charge to backfill that. Well, I talked to our general manager this afternoon to try and pin him down for a number, and he says we will probably not raise the sewer service charge this year, and we'll probably be able to put in at least $150,000 the first year into Parks and Rec. So we're doing pretty well. I expect it'll be higher, it might not be, it depends on what goes on at the sewer authority, because maintaining the sewer system has to remain our first priority. But $150,000 for a small district is pretty good for Parks and Rec. So I guess I'll mention real quick, there was a reference by Marlene to our agreement with County Parks and Rec. That's because we don't have field staff. The county has expert field staff, and it just makes a lot of sense for us to utilize their expertise instead of trying to hire our own people that, it wouldn't make sense for us to have full-time people for some significant amount of time. And we will also, for certain things that we do, end up under contract working with the Resource Conservation District for their special expertise. And I'm still hoping we can do something really nice with our Burnham Sturt property. So, questions? Okay. Maybe we'll have a crowd at the meeting tomorrow, I hope.
Thank you, Leonard. Linda, do you want to come up and...
Actually, I'm going to defer to Vern.
Okay. Go for it.
Hi, I'm Vern Smith. I am a former co-sider and have been for several years the, Peninsula South and East Bay Trail Director for the Bay Area Ridge Trail Council. I think the last time I presented to a group like this out here was about 6 years ago. And the very short story about the Ridge Trail is that the concept is decades old, and we've first actually started putting up signs on trails and calling them Ridge Trail about 26 years ago. And 6 years ago, when I reported on our progress in San Mateo County, we were at 40 miles of Ridge Trail in the county. And sadly, we're only at 41 miles in San Mateo County right now. But a couple of things have happened since then. One was that the Mid-Peninsula Regional Open Space District, with your help and many other people's help, passed the bond measure AA last summer. And that set aside, over the course of the next 25 years or so, $300 million for acquisition and development of open space properties in San Mateo and Santa Clara County. The key polling point for both the Measure AA bond issue and the the property tax in the Santa Clara County at the Open Space Authority down there was increasing public access. And in fact, both of those votes required the agencies to actually define in some detail what they were going to do with the money they're going to collect. And in both cases, finishing the Ridge Trail was the single highest priority for those two agencies. So MidPen is on record now as saying they're going to close all the gaps in the Ridge Trail in San Mateo County that are left, that they have authority over. And that includes gaps that are currently on private land. In addition to that, the San Francisco PUC, we've heard some talk about what's going on with the PUC. And what you might not know is that the Ridge Trail Council was probably the primary group that got the Ridge Trail open on the PUC lands in the Crystal Springs watershed back almost 15 years ago, but it took about 25 years of sort of working over the PUC and the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. That Ridge Trail's been open now for 12 or 13 years, and thousands of people have visited the PUC property along the ridge line on the Ridge Trail with the docent-led program. The key point about that program is it's very well documented, and the PUC staff flatly say that there have been 0 impacts from the 12,000 or 13,000 visitors and the many, many hundreds of outings that have been held there. That is really the driver for this consideration of expanding or liberalizing access to the property. Plus, the fact that the Ridge Trail is now planned, the planning is done for the Ridge Trail on 6 more miles south of Highway 92. So essentially from the Highway 92, Highway 35 junction, all the way down to the Flegger property, the Flegger estate, which is part of the National Park Service. The proposal to build that trail and the funding for it are about to go through the environmental review. And it has always been the intent of the PUC that that 6 miles of trail south of Highway 92 would be operated like a regular park trail that's open in the morning and closed at night. Full stop. No docents required. More recently, in the last year or so, the PUC staff have been sort of coming to their senses about how strange it is to manage a piece of trail on one side of a road like a park trail and a piece of trail on the other side of the road by this very sort of restrictive docent program. So now they're proposing that during the environmental review process for the construction, that they will open for public comment this expanded access proposal. In addition to that, they're also looking at a connector trail, partially to be built, new trail that is essentially connecting from the Sawyer Camp Trail at the north end of the watershed to the Ridge Trail as it exists now. And then opening an additional piece of trail called Whiting Ridge, which already exists. And effectively, when that's done, having a trail that runs from essentially the coastal trail in Montara over the top to the Ridge Trail and to the Sawyer Camp Trail, effectively getting to the top of San Bruno Avenue, if you know where that is. And that would be an extraordinary additional connection for trail users, non-motorized, multi-use, hikers, cyclists, equestrians. So, although we didn't get very much done on the ground in the last 6 years, in the next couple of years, we're looking at 6 new miles of trail in the Peninsula watershed, another mile of connector trail that would be new construction, plus another up to a mile at Milagro Ridge up in Pacifica, and getting the rest of the Ridge Trail done between Milagro and Daly City. So we're looking at about, all told, 8 or 10 new miles of Ridge Trail in the next 3-4 years, and practically closing all of the gaps in the Ridge Trail in the county. So that's where we're at right now. I'd be happy to take a question or two. Yes?
Hey, Brian, long time no see.
I know.
For those of us who aren't familiar with the exact locations of these, where is this going to cross 92? Because you said 6 miles south of 92, so where's that highway crossing going to be?
So, yeah, so let's sort of, step away from nice little, dirt paths and look at crossing, not hiking, cycling, and equestrian crossing of Highway 92 at the junction of Highway 35.
Upper or lower?
Upper, yeah, on the ridge. So yeah, it's a big question. Caltrans has a preliminary plan for upgrading that intersection, and it might be decades before they ever get around to it. But we're raising the question now with the PUC about they're going to have to step up and look at this. It's one thing to say, yeah, we've got a trail south of Highway 92 and we have a trail north of Highway 92. But getting people across the highway is a big deal. And there is precedent for having a trail user-controlled traffic light. And we know precisely where that is. It's at the Devil Slide Trail on Highway 1. It seems to be working. I don't have numbers on it. Marlene might, Caltrans might, but we're going to have to raise that issue, and I'm hoping that the PUC will take it up because they haven't really talked about it yet, and it's supremely important. That it? Okay. Well, thanks for the opportunity. I have a couple of print apps here, and we can look them over later if you want to talk about it.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for coming and everybody for presenting. I think we got a lot of information, more than I could really take in, so I'll be looking forward to presentations. Does anybody have any last questions or comments while people are still here? All right, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you very much, everybody.